Hey guys, my name is Matteo, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming or Battlefield Day questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the format out of the way real quick, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below or by sending me a Facebook and Twitter message. The first question for today comes from Nathan, and it is, what are your thoughts on a Battlefield Armageddon game? Well, I'm not exactly sure what you mean by Armageddon, because there's a lot of situations that could, cause the end of the world. But if you're talking about a situation where two or a bunch of superpower nations are fighting over select resources or something to allow them to survive, that could be a really cool concept. This is actually something that could occur in our future, which would lend it credibility and some realism. As we all know, the world's population is exploding, and eventually it might get to the point where there's so many people that resources become scarce, and then superpowers have to fight over these resources. Maybe a plague breaks out, and that causes a chain of events where only the strongest will survive, while the rest of the world crumbles into anarchy. That could be a really cool setting for a first-person shooter. The thing is, though, is it only really makes sense for the single-player components. As soon as we move on over into the multiplayer, while you could have some maps that fit the setting of Armageddon, one ruined city in Battlefield 4 is going to look very similar to a ruined city in an Armageddon situation. And so while I love the concept of it for a single-player component, I think you could really delve in to some hot topics and some really controversial issues about humanity and what life might become if this ever does happen. But from a multiplayer standpoint, which makes Battlefield, it really wouldn't have that much of an impact. If what you meant was that we should go more into a post-apocalyptic situation for the next Battlefield game, then I feel like we're moving into territory that really doesn't make sense for the franchise. When I think of post-apocalyptic, I think of society that is on just the brink of survival. Everyone is holding on for dear life, and the idea of even having the infrastructure to have tanks, jets, and helicopters, which is a key component of what makes Battlefield, just would not be viable in a post-apocalyptic situation. And so while it could be a really cool spin-off game if it was done correctly, I really don't think it would need the Battlefield name at that point. Like, do we need classes? Is it going to have vehicles? Like, what about a post-apocalyptic game would make it Battlefield? And so while conceptually it sounds really cool, it probably could make for an amazing first-person shooter, I just don't think it would really work in the parameters of what makes Battlefield. And so while I really like the idea of having an Armageddon type of single player, I think that if done correctly, that could be amazing. You also have to realize that it probably would not have that much of an impact on the multiplayer, which is what a lot of people play the game to begin with. The next question comes from Tim, and it is, what are your thoughts on Rainbow Six Siege putting a lot of the weapons behind a paywall? I know that they're just aesthetic and not necessarily critical to the game, but on top of them being real money, in my opinion, they are ridiculously overpriced. One part of me is right there with you with his complaints. I've already put an obscene amount of hours into Rainbow Six Siege, and through my progress, I've been able to build up a lot of renown or the in-game currency. Every time I go to the shop, though, to buy a cool skin, I always leave disappointed because the badass the ones that I really want because they look amazing, are always behind a paywall. And so one part of me is thinking, hey, I put $60 down for this multiplayer exclusive title. Some people would say that $60 for a multiplayer game is already too high, and now you're already adding microtransactions on top of that? Talk about greedy. And I completely understand that mentality. For a lot of people out there, if they put down $60, they want every single part of that game, and if anything's behind a paywall, they're gonna be upset, and that's completely valid. $60 is a lot, and you would think that you would get the full package, but that's not the case with Rainbow Six Siege. On the other side of the coin, though, and this is where I would position myself, is that while yes, it is frustrating there's already microtransactions, I have to keep telling myself that it's okay because this is funding the development of future free content, which is new operators and new maps. For every other first-person shooter out there that has these paywalls that splits up the community, Ubisoft has taken a firm stance that that is not something that they want to do with their video game, and I have to give them respect for that. At the end of the day, they do have to make money here. They are a business, they have to pay the developers. They do need to make money, but the fact that they're doing it with something that is purely cosmetic, that is the thing. You really do not have to spend any more money on the game if you don't want to, and you're still going to have access to new classes, the new operators, and the new content. And so while I'm right there with you, the prices might seem severe. It might seem like they're trying to milk us for all it's worth. The other side of me, the more reasonable side, is like, okay, yeah, but we have to decide on what we want for our video games. Do we want them to have a healthy community for the future? Do we want them to have continued support that is 100% free if you don't want to spend any money? Then this seems like a fair trade-off. Some people are going to completely disagree with me. They're going to have the stance that, hey, nope, if I put $60 down, then I should get all the content. And I completely understand where they're coming from. Like, I totally do. And this is why it's a very controversial topic. But at the end of the day, I do think that the way that Ubisoft is approaching their microtransactions is okay, and as long as they don't do anything shady in the future, I think that Rainbow Six Siege will benefit from it. The next question comes from Steven, and it is, do you think they should be able to pick up or swap with a fallen operator's class/gadget? I think it would add an interesting dynamic into the game if you were the last one left and you could pick up a shield or breaching charges by swapping your kit with a dead teammate. I have also given this a lot of thought, but it's hard to know the implications or how this would affect the gameplay for better or worse. There's been a lot of situations where I'm on a team on offense and our thermite just dies instantaneously. Maybe he just got unlucky and the enemy was able to peek through one of the windows and just shoot him out at the beginning of the round, or he did something stupid, but at the end of the day, we're now left with a very key aspect of our team dead on the ground and no way to use it. There are some maps where it feels almost impossible to win and secure the objective if you do not have a thermite. The plane is a good example. The bar is another one, because there are certain sections of it where they can reinforce almost every wall, and it requires you to go through maybe like 1 or 2 choke points. It can be a nightmare. And so the idea of being able to just kind of run up and pick up the gadget and then use it for your team to help you secure the victory doesn't really sound like it'd be all that bad. When you're on the defensive team though, and you do successfully take out the thermites, it might be a little annoying if someone is able just to kind of quickly swap between gadgets the entire round and use the strengths of when they're appropriate. I don't think it would necessarily be game-breaking, and I feel like this argument is a little bit weaker, but it would change up that dynamic, and for some people that might be frustrating. It might be the very reason why they didn't add it into the game. All this might be remedied in the future with the new operators. I have a suspicion that one of the 8 new operators is going to be able to punch through reinforced walls. I don't have any proof of this, but the fact that there's only one right now that has that capability, I have a sleeping suspicion that eventually in the future we might see another. And so if that does happen, it feels like there would be less of a reason to make this change, but there's also other situations like you just described, where if you're playing as someone who just simply cannot breach through a wall, all of the walls are fully secured, it's gonna suck, and having the option just to kind of switch on over to another kit and have their breaching charges doesn't really seem like a bad idea. And so I'd like to get your guys' take on this. Do you like the concept of being able to swap gadgets on the fly with a dead person body? Do you think that that would be pushing things too far? Do you think it'd be well balanced? It's kind of hard to say, so let me know your guys' thoughts down below. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's Sunday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. As always, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below or by sending me a Facebook and Twitter message. But until tomorrow, guys, have a good one and take it easy.